All right, joining us today is Liam Maguire, commonly known as the Walking Encyclopedia on Hockey Knowledge. Liam, how are you doing, sir?
I'm very good, Kyle. Very good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Things are good in your neck of the woods. Everyone's happy and healthy.
Everybody's healthy, and everyone's relatively happy, as you and I were just discussing here before the show. It's been a dry few months for me professionally because I largely speak to publicly to make a living. So that's kind of gone by the wayside here, and we continue to wait, which sadly could be a while longer before the world comes up for air. But got a few things going, and I just keep chugging away, try and stay healthy myself, hopefully, and just go from there. We just obviously had a couple of good months running with hockey, so I was pretty happy about that. And so that was good, and we'll, I guess, immerse myself into college football in the NFL here if it doesn't get shut down. So hopefully everything goes well, and we'll just hope for some sort of break in the pandemic here sooner rather than later.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And yeah, we're recording this on a Tuesday here, and they just announced that the Vikings and Titans both had outbreaks. And so,
I
like
know.
you're saying, let's just hope that we can, keep moving in the right direction, and we don't have to go to some sort of crazy bubble season in other sports as well there too.
Yeah. Well, more than they're doing. I mean, you look at baseball playoffs are on right now. There's obviously nobody in the buildings, and whatever they're getting for the NFL games is marginal, obviously, compared to what would typically be there. So, but the outbreaks and the numbers rising again are disturbing. And look, we're in something that I don't care what age you are. Nobody could have figured they'd ever live through something like this. And God willing, they'll find a vaccine sooner rather than later, because short of that, I don't know how we come out of it. I really don't.
Yeah, no, it's so true, so true. Well, I mean, on that happy note,
Yeah.
let's launch into something that just transpired last night. You and I were going back and forth earlier in the week as far as we wanted to get you on sort of after the cup got handed out, and we went, okay, well, we'll try and get you then. And then Dallas won another game, and that's okay. Well, these days might work out. Long story short, Tampa Bay finally took care of business last night and hoisted the cup there. Did you find during these playoffs, because you're at home and that, were you watching more hockey? Were you watching less hockey, or about the same as you normally would be?
I was watching the same. I know I'm not a good measuring stick because I'm a hardcore fanatic. I mean, I am the guy that put FAN into fanatic, and I'm not one of those that dropped off just because A, it's a pandemic, B, the games don't look or have the feel even on TV as we normally would be accustomed to seeing. I know the numbers are down on NBC drastically. I haven't heard the Rogers numbers yet. I'm sure they'll be down as well. I don't think it was anywhere near as compelling a series as St. Louis and Boston just last year, for example. But having said that, this is an unusual time. And there were countless people, including many friends of mine, who said not only would there never be hockey again in 2020, they'll never award a cup. And then conversely, not conversely, but additionally, they were saying that nor should there be. And I disagreed strenuously with that. I thought if the provisions could be made, and if medical clearances could be assuaded, that we knew they were going to be taken care of, and at the very least, set it up and try it, especially once they eliminated Vegas and Phoenix and a couple of the other places in the States that looked like maybe could have, Philadelphia, wherever, could have been a potential bubble home. And they said, no, we'll go to Canada. It's by far the best move here. It's all in, man. I don't get the negativity, but other than that's just the way people are today. People are negative first and positive second. It fits agendas. It fits narratives. Me, personally, you're asking, I watch everything every year, and I have for decades. It's what I do. It's what I love, and I was firmly engrossed in it. Were there some duds games? Absolutely. Show me a playoff year where there hasn't been. It's just amazing. So all of a sudden, and it's like my dear friend Ken Reed on Sportsnet teeing off on the fact that goal scoring is down, and they're hardly getting any shots on net. Jesus, when was the last time we had to play through a pandemic?
Yeah.
Come on, Kenny. I just really taken aback by how people are just so wishy-washy and just fall off, just fall off. Is your glass half full or is it half empty?
Yeah.
And buckle up your chin strap expect the rough ride, and enjoy what we're getting if you're a hockey fan, because we got a lot of good hockey.
Oh, absolutely. And, you brought up the point too, even when they were trying to figure out where they were going to host it, right? Why it took them so long to even settle on, okay, let's just put both of the bubbles north of the border there, based on the cases that, when they were actually trying to plan this, they were through the roof in the States there. I don't know why that wasn't the instant solution as far as, let's get it up there, but probably.
Because the reason it wasn't the instant solution is I think Bettman and Daly and company were doing everything in their power to try and find an American hub city. I mean, I think in a perfect world, that's what would have probably suited the best. And, this was before but don't forget when the whole thing broke and they announced it was going to be hockey, and they said that it looked like the strong likelihood was there would be an American hub city and possibly a Canadian one. And then the Canadian government said, okay, we'll waive the 14-day quarantine. If these guys are tested in the States and they pass, and they get all on a plane together on a charter, and they come over and all land together and all house together, we don't have to worry about the 14-day quarantine. We'll just keep testing them every day. As we know now, that didn't come to pass. But I think they desperately wanted something in American hub city, and that's why they didn't rubber stamp Canada right out of the gate, Kyle. I think, they just were looking at understanding that they have an NBC contract that they obviously were going to fulfill as well. They were trying to gleam on to any type of connection to the States other than the two named cities, in this case, Dallas and Tampa. And wherever the hub would have been would have probably generated some height of awareness and interest as well. So I think that's the only reason they were a little bit tardy in naming the Edmonton and Toronto. But at the end of the day, they did, and which was the right call, as you just said. And we all benefited from it as hockey fans. For sure.
So now that it's all wrapped up, do you feel like it truly was the best team that won, that Tampa was the best team, cream of the crop this year? Or do you think it was sort of the result of the circumstances and they happened to be the best bubble team, or the team that adjusted the best to the bubble?
Well, they were the best team in the East, no question. And they proved to be the best team in the 4 rounds that they played. And I think I will say that Dallas's resilience and Hudobin's goaltending, those two factors probably deprived us of what would have been a much more entertaining final, let's say, had Vegas got through. Mm-hmm. They looked like they were really poised to make some noise. Even Vancouver, to be honest, that may have been actually the best series of all that I watched. Mm-hmm. Was Vancouver and Vegas, if you think about it, from game to game. So I think of the series that they played, and certainly coming through the East, Tampa Bay were by far the best, and they were by far the best of the two teams in the final, by far. And just Dallas were resilient, man. And Jamie Benn got going, and obviously Hudobin was a real story. Their back end was a hell of a story. One of the most offensive scoring back ends in NHL playoff history. So you had a lot of factors that contributed to their success, but then they died by 1,000 cuts. Faxa, Coleman, or Como, should say. Coleman's on Tampa, but they lost some ingredients there, 2-3 guys, key parts, and it hurt. We know Seguin was playing hurt and all the rest, but Tampa were the best in the East, the best in who they played, but I think a Tampa more entertaining than this one was, despite this one having its moments. But Tampa, give them their due, man. They deserve to win.
Yeah, for sure. And, so Victor Hedman gets awarded the Conn Smythe last night there. Yeah, there could have been quite a few players that they could have gone. Could have gone Brayden Point, could have gone Kucherov. There was an outside case for Vasilevsky. Did you have any sort of bones to pick with that selection, or were you pretty content with him walking away with the hardware there?
100%. Had I had a vote, I would have voted him. Point, I'm assuming, finished second. I remind people all the time that in 1997, the closest Conn Smythe voting in history, Mike Vernon beat Steve Yzerman by 1 vote, the Conn Smythe. There's been numerous others where the vote has been separated by as few as 10. So it's the nature of the beast. You're talking about typically 8 weeks, 4 series, and you're not supposed to really have any factor from the regular season here. And I think they got, he's playing 26 minutes, the overtime games. You think of the games they were involved in. No team in NHL history has played more overtime. The Canadians had the 11 games and the 10 wins in 93, but Tampa broke the record for minutes here. Montreal's wasn't even a minute record anyway, even with that. They just had the wins record, consecutive wins record. But no, I had no problem with Hedman at all. He was an absolute beast, just a tower of strength back there. He looked outstanding, and he would have been my vote if I had had one.
Yeah. Do you think he has a case now for best defenseman currently in the NHL?
Well, I think there's no doubt. I don't think there's I think if you polled 31 other GMs, including Seattle right now, aside from Julien Brisebois, they'd all say Hedman in a heartbeat. I mean, I know Roman Josi got the Norris, but again, those votes were tabulated whenever they deemed, I guess, that they weren't going to play those final 10, 12 games of the regular season. And at that point, you didn't have any playoff action. So, good on Josi. And John, look at the year John Carlson had. I mean, really. You could have easily made a case for him for the Norris Trophy, and that's what the trophies are supposed to be. They're supposed to be for the regular season, and the Conn Smythe isn't. And yet, right now, I don't think there's any doubt about it. But we didn't get Josi able to continue, or John Carlson able to continue to see how they would have done had the opportunity to play, a second, a third, or a fourth round. You can say, well, they contributed to that because they weren't as good as Hedman. But it gets pretty convoluted, right? Yeah. So is Hedman the best defenseman in the world right now, today? Absolutely. Right at this moment, September 29th, he's the best right now, for sure.
Yeah. So, flip side of the coin here, we've been talking a lot about bubble successes here. Who, in your opinion, was the biggest disappointment as far as a team goes as their playoff bubble sort of experience went there?
Well, I mean, Pittsburgh and Washington mailed it in. The Penguins, which is why Jim Rutherford reacted the way he did. He was livid. He's already made one deal. I suspect there'll be others before they ever drop a puck in a meaningful game again. And I think he was absolutely disheartened how the veterans, including Sid and Gino, in that pivotal fifth game, they had a power play, and Sid came off. I was watching with my roommate. He's sitting upstairs right now listening to the end of the Jays game, if it's still on. And I said, Pittsburgh's mailing it in, man. They mailed it in. And frankly, Washington weren't a whole lot better. And I just think they're older teams. And the guys had already been there for a period of a couple of weeks, getting tested every day, no family and friends. They've both got recent Stanley Cups. They've both got legacies. I'm talking now specifically about Ovi and Sid. Mm-hmm. The rest of the guys go as they go. And I think, you'd like to crucify them here as a fan, but I'm not going to. I'm going to say, look, they just said to hell with it. We're not going through this grind. And they packed it in. What did we all hear as fans in those first few weeks? All we heard was how close the New York Islanders had become, how quickly and how close they had assimilated and fit into the whole bubble life, The Islanders, they got the ping pong tournaments. They're all going out, 25 guys, all 31 guys on the roster, everybody one night here, one night there. That's all we heard. So I think there were some teams that were into it a little bit more. And I'd say some like Pittsburgh and Washington weren't.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Pittsburgh would have been my pick as well, too, there. Listening to Rutherford's comments after they got eliminated there, reading between the lines, do you think he was making a thinly veiled barb at Malkin specifically there with some of his comments after they had gotten ousted?
Actually, that's a good question. I don't know that I would say that definitively, Kyle. I think it was comments really aimed at the veteran core group there, which is led by Sid and Gino. Hey, listen, if he wasn't aiming them at Sidney Crosby in a veiled way, then he was in error, because Sidney deserved the heat as well. And look, he's still one of the greatest players in the world, and his legacy, as I just said, is firmly intact. And Malkin's, although a poor comparison to Sid, has still done pretty damn good by NHL standards anyway. No, they all have to take some heat there, but I think that given the unusualness of the situation, I don't think anybody, and I don't think the fans that watched, or even those that didn't, I don't think anybody deserves any shade or any heat or any negativity, really. We have got a situation unlike any in the history of the world. Certainly unlike any in the history of hockey. I mean, nobody was alive in 1918 and 1919 when the Spanish influenza canceled the NHL playoffs. And they still tried to play through that. Montreal and Seattle were in the final, and they had played 5 games, and had half the Canadian roster not gotten sick and hospitalized, there was only going to be one more game anyway. All they had to do is play one more game. You would have had a Stanley Cup winner in 1919. But the Canadians couldn't ice a team. So, no, I don't have anything negative to say about the Penguins. And I just say that them and the Capitals mailed it in. But I'm not saying it in a negative fashion. I'm just saying that they did. And their GMs, especially Rutherford, was quite eloquent when he very much so agreed. And he's already made a significant move, and I do believe there'll be others to come. That's his job. He's a GM. You know, you and I are fans talking the sport in some way, shape, or form. It's not incumbent on us to try and figure out why Sid and Gino just said, F this, but they did. Or Ovi, right? Brian McClellan, the GM, is going, oh my God, like, we're 2 years removed from the Cup, and we could have maybe made some noise here. We had Carlson. You know, we still have goaltending, this, that, and the other. No, man, they mailed it in too. They didn't want it. So, you know, if you want to look at disappointment, look at the Leafs. Man, they don't get by Columbus.
Yeah.
So I think Leaf fans are probably the ones. So nothing really ultimately hurts a Leaf fan. Like once you become a Leaf fan, you get your stamps and you get your badge and you put it on. It says 1967, and then it says never again, because they'll never win. And that's the team that really, you know, you look at it and you just go, what? Like whatever.
So I mean, you know,
having some fun, by the way.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Can't wait to see the comment section on the posts after this for the Leaf fans there. But I mean, you know, you fast forward 10 years from now, how do you think we're going to look back on this sort of bubble playoffs? Do you think we're going to look at it any differently than previous Stanley Cup winners, or do you think over time it's all just sort of going to come out in the wash and there's, you know, we'll remember that it was quirky, but not really all that different?
Oh no, this'll be remembered forever, and I think noted forever. Let's just hope it's the only one.
Yeah.
Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
Seriously, who knows? But I mean, let's say all things being equal, and we're back to some level of normalcy in 2021, at least by hockey standards and God willing, living standards and everything else. Yeah, I think this will be looked back on historically as an absolute total aberration, with the exception of the fact that they had a play-in round. They did it right. I totally applaud the NHL for how they did it. Nobody was eliminated that should have been eliminated. Everybody had a chance to advance. And then when it got down to the crunch, they still played 4 best-of-7s. Mm-hmm. You still had to win 4 best-of-7s, which has been the case since 1987 to win the Stanley Cup. And people say, you know, they didn't finish the season. Well, 1995 and 2013, you had 48-game seasons. They played way more games this year. Yeah. Everybody played at least 68. There were teams that played 71. So that's not the factor. So it's really only the fact that you were stuck in cities with no fans and everything the players had to endure, and then the impact of what was going on around them, with no home ice advantage and all the ebbs and flows that comes from the travel, from everything else. You know, it makes it a slightly different series. But it didn't affect the outcome, I don't believe. Somebody needed to beat Dallas 4 out of 7 times to knock them off, and 3 teams couldn't do it. You know, that you had 7 games to win 4, and you couldn't do it. There's a reason why a goaltender has won the Conn Smythe 16 times, because they step up. And that doesn't even include guys that have had superlative performances through semifinals or even into a final, like a Hudobin, who probably was in, probably got some Conn Smythe votes himself, less than the Tampa guys. But I mean, there's goaltenders, multiple goaltenders have won the Conn Smythe on a losing team.
Yeah.
Starting with Roger Crozier in '66 and all the way up to Jaguar in 2003 and several in between. So, I mean, no, I think it'll be looked back on as an absolute aberration. But having said that, I wouldn't have an asterisk beside it. I mean, to me, Tampa were full on, full measure, and full respect for that win.
Yeah. So was there anything that you saw during these playoffs there, whether it was, from a broadcasting standpoint or a formatting or however they sort of did it there, that you went, you know what, I really like that. I never saw that before. I'd like them to take that and actually roll it over into a 2021 season there. Was there anything that sort of stood out to you?
That's a good question. If anything, it's probably the reverse. I hate that that camera behind the net when a team's in the offensive zone and the camera's in the defensive zone, especially on the power play. There seems to be some directors that like to go there. I don't understand it. Absolutely do not understand it. Even watching the Jays game tonight, the count's 2-2. It's around the 5th or 6th inning. And don't forget, a director has to call for the switch of a camera. And then the switcher will switch it. So he'll have to call camera 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever. And he calls a camera in the crowd to show the fans, maybe their relatives or whatever. It's like 3 fans sitting there. He missed the pitch.
Yeah.
It's the first game of best of 5. Toronto's playing. It's a Rogers broadcast. You missed the pitch. You come back, it's a ball. Well, I mean, these guys, they overthink it sometimes. And I can't say necessarily that there was anything that really sticks out to me, Kyle, that I saw that I go, oh, God, I wish they could do that more on a regular basis. I guess maybe they can't because with fans in the building, you couldn't put a camera there or whatever. So it wasn't necessarily anything that stood out to me personally. Mm-hmm. I guess I'm showing my age there a little bit. I kind of just like it, just let me watch the game.
Yeah.
Quit screwing around with my broadcast, man. Just let me watch the game. No, and I thought what we saw for the most part was pretty good.
Yeah, no, I know exactly where you're coming from there too. They definitely were taking some creative liberties with some of the angles they were doing, and I think they maybe had been watching too much of the NBA playoffs where they were doing the sort of court vision along the sideline type things and getting funky there. The one thing I did like that they were doing was, and I have no idea whether they were only able to do this because there weren't fans or what sort of the parameters would be if they were actually moving fans in the background. But the fact that they actually had some of the graphics of the players while the play was going on, if they were talking about, Braden Point, there would be the quick graphic and, his stats and all that popping up. And it kind of was taking a page almost out of like a Monday Night Football thing where they've got all these special graphics packages and all that queued up, because over the years, I think the one knock on the NHL has really been they really don't do a good job of marketing their superstars at all, right? So, maybe getting some more of that out there, I could see rolling over, but 100% agree. Some of the camera angles there, especially during a power play where you're trying to see where the puck's moving, all you see is the back of a jersey and a number 35 and a net. It's like that we probably could have done away with for sure.
I like your point. I will say that I was struggling to try and recall what really kind of I enjoyed. And I like the fact that they were timing some of the shifts and they would flash that up there. It was kind of neat to see. Saw Hedman had a shift there over 3 minutes, and you see sometimes, a lines got stuck out there and they'll flash a shift. I thought that was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. So some of the graphic stuff, I will agree. That was that was good stuff. These are all enhancements, I think, in the last 12 to 24 months, if I'm not mistaken. So that's cool. And that is cool to see. You see the guys that you really are interested in, especially maybe guys on your team, whoever you cheer for, and you're seeing little tidbits of information like that. I mean, you can get so much online now. It's either like as the game is happening, there certainly as a period is over. So it's all so much readily available. But in game like that, I enjoyed that. I thought that was good.
Yeah. So playoffs are now done. We're going to have a shortened off season here before we sort of roll into next year there. You've got Ottawa's got 1,000,001 draft picks and actually need to spend money before they can even get to the cap floor. Montreal seems to be making a full court push for, trying to put together some sort of a deal for Laine from the Jets. Toronto is fresh off, another first round exit there, disappointing playoff run. So they've got to retinker there. Looking at the Canadian teams, if you had to, look into the future and make a prediction, what kind of moves or things do you think will be on the horizon for some of the Canadian teams in the region?
Well, you've touched on basically what the rumors are, that are out there anyway by at least by Montreal standard, and they were reinforced today. Marc Bergevin did a almost 40-minute interview on Montreal radio today, and basically said, yeah, look, he said it right on the air. I'm looking to deal players and I'm willing to part with our first round pick, which isn't a top 3 or anything. So I don't know how sexy that is to people, but at the end of the day, with the right package, who knows? I think Winnipeg were decimated by injuries, and that's the only reason they lost to Calgary. I had them pegged to win, and if Scheifele doesn't get hurt, and you think of how many guys they lost on D this year. Hellebuck steps up, wins the Vezina, has an absolute career year. It's probably the only reason they got there. But I still had them pegged to beat Calgary. I really like where they're going. This whole Laine situation is interesting. That backfired 24 years ago when they traded Solani. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of ironic how similar that is, in the sense that here's this guy. Yeah, he wins the Rookie of the Year, but he was hardly a rookie. He had played like 5 years of pro in Finland, right? But regardless, first year in the NHL, he scores 76 goals. Well, he depreciates after that. They decide to move him, and that trade was a disaster. So whether history repeats itself or not, and they actually move this guy who can score 50 for sure, it'll be interesting to see. But Toronto has get into the Stanley Cup final. People need to look at whoever they cheer for and watch these teams. And you should be able to see that you are miles apart, man. Like I once caught a fish this big. Yeah. They're miles apart, most of these teams, with the exception of maybe Vancouver. I think they're the best of the Canadian lot by now. And I think the most exciting and the most encouraging and probably the most likely, I think, to get to a final next are the Vancouver Canucks. And I'm sure Benning and company are probably far from done dealing there, and they'll try and shore up themselves as well. Montreal, I think Montreal is the second most picks next to Ottawa this year. And Bergevin went online today, on the radio today, said he's willing to make a deal. So we'll see what happens. But Ottawa, this is a draft of a lifetime for the Ottawa Senators. I mean, they came in the league in 92, and there's no other draft that will. Man, you could even, I wouldn't say break them, because they're not going to go anywhere. I don't believe. At some point, Melnyk will move on, right, in one way, shape, or form, and he'll have to, because probably with him at the helm, you're not going to get it done. But this draft is huge for them. Mm-hmm. So 3, 5, and 28 in the first round, and then 4 more in the second. You kidding me? Oh my God, yeah. That's fantastic. So yeah, I think the Canadian teams are mostly all in pretty good shape. I mean, to a degree. Like I said, Toronto's got questions, and Calgary has questions. Everybody else right now is selling hope. I think the Habs are selling hope. Ottawa's selling hope. Winnipeg were decimated by injuries. I think they're strong. If they do move Laine, you got to hope for their sake. They hit a home run. They got the Vezina Trophy winner and a lot of other really attractive pieces. I love that team. And Vancouver's the next up-and-comer. And Edmonton, there's the other one, really, with the biggest question marks. Because you've got that 1-2 punch. And if you can't figure it out, how to surround those guys with what they need. I could not believe they lost to Chicago, especially after, I believe it was game 2, when Connor had the hat trick and he scored that goal, one of the greatest goals you'll see. I mean, you could say that about the guy every 4th goal he scores, but that one was so freaking unbelievable. and you blow that from a momentum perspective and from an emotional lift perspective, you can't carry that through and win that series against the Hawks. Hey, Taves and Kane played out of their mind. But, I mean, you got to win that series. So there's some serious trouble there in Edmonton. Serious trouble. And they're spinning their wheels there with two amazing hockey players, as we well know. So a couple question marks. Calgary, Edmonton, and Toronto. And I'd say 4 that are really trending, 3 selling hope and 1 selling winning in a big way, Vancouver.
Yeah.
That's why I break down the Canadian teams.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. Edmonton, you got to wonder how many more years they can burn of, McDavid and Draisaitl's prime before they start, really taking a long, hard look at either free agency or demanding a trade or something there. But they, like you said, they gotta start making some moves eventually here. Canadian teams now, just in general, we're quickly approaching almost the 30-year mark now since the last time a Canadian team actually hoisted the Stanley Cup here. In your opinion, what are the main factors for that? Is it just a weird anomaly, or is it, harder, more pressure playing north of the border? Free agents don't want to come here. Is it a dollar valuation thing? Like, what are the ingredients that have led to this prolonged drought?
Well, Toronto's having no trouble paying guys. And, there's certainly, it's well documented about the tax situation in Quebec, and there's no question that's hindered Montreal. They have had a hard time bringing in quality free agents and things of that nature. Marc Bergevin, I think, has done an okay job, but I don't think he should be the general manager of this club. I think he forego his opportunity to be the GM a couple of years back when he blew the Radulov situation, to be honest. And then if you're going to sit down collectively and make an offer sheet to somebody, you should be making it for the understanding and the purpose that you don't want it matched, or you want to make it so difficult for them to match. And you got to be willing to part with what it was going to cost them on the draft board. And I don't think they were. I think that he tried to skate on that as well. And at the end of the day, it was no skin off the nose, as the saying goes. But what is the factors? The Habs win the Cup in '93. You had some good semifinal runs, especially by Toronto, the rest of that decade. And then you get into Calgary going 7 games in '04, Edmonton going 7 games in '06, Vancouver goes 7 games in 2011. The Senators in 2017 losing the semis in double overtime to the team that won the Stanley Cup. There's been some great Canadian performances very deep in the playoffs, and they haven't been able to get it done. So I think a little bit it's just happenstance. A little bit is for sure. There is a different factor when trying to put teams together north of the border, especially in salary cap era. Even though everyone's paid American funds and they all can afford it, they all have. A lot of those teams have spent to the cap, and, Toronto certainly has, and other teams have had no problem spending the money. So I don't know, Kyle, if there's any one definitive thing. I just, actually, it's funny you're asking that, because there's a retired political reporter. He worked on the Hill for years, and he was the BC rep on the Hill. He's 75 years old. And his cousin is a friend of mine, and he sent me his blog, because he rarely writes about hockey, but he ripped the NHL, and he said the league, it's ridiculous. We haven't had a Stanley Cup in Canada since 1993, and we should have a Canadian league and bring it back, bring hockey back to Canada. And he went on. He said a bunch of nonsensical things because he didn't really know. Hockey's not his thing. He's a political guy. So I wrote a response. Anyway, he ended up phoning me last night. We talked on the phone for half an hour. And he's really super nice guy. But I was explaining to him. I said, don't look for some, smoking gun here. Other than Montreal and the tax situation, which is a legit concern, there's no doubt. Look, you could say, do you want to spend a winter in Winnipeg? I don't really know that a lot of people do.
I don't know if a lot of people in Canada want to do that.
But I mean, hey, listen, do you think it's any picnic in Buffalo right now?
Yeah.
I mean, sure. In Florida and Arizona, you got the weather and you got the anonymity because nobody knows who the hell you are. So I guess that attracts you because you're making millions and you don't ever have to worry about coming close to winning a Stanley Cup because you never will. That's what turns your crank. So it's not like the 7 Canadian teams I think are competing against soon to be 25 American teams other than at face value for the Stanley Cup. I think it's just the fact that of the 8 or 10 that have sort of rotated at or near the top here on the American side, south of the 49th here, and have won cups, we've come up a day late and a buck short in a few instances. And the rest of it really is, it's been a coin flip. It's just the way it's gone. You know, the tangible reasons I don't believe are near the factor that people think. This guy last night trying to tell me it's all officiating and directed by Gary Bettman, that he only wants American teams to win. And it's his worst case scenario to have, you know, say an all Canadian final or even a Canadian team in a final. I said, are you kidding me right now? He would do cartwheels if he got a Montreal or Toronto in his Stanley Cup final. Believe me, he would. And yeah, does he want an Ottawa or a Winnipeg or a Calgary? Or, you know, Edmonton, you got McDavid and Draisaitl. He knows that's marketable. But he also knows that if he got a Florida and an Arizona in a Stanley Cup final, it probably would be the death of the NHL. So, you know, I mean, I think we get – don't get me wrong, man. It's frustrating to me too. Nobody waves the flag more than me. People may wave it as much as me, but nobody waves it more than me. And it's frustrating to me, too, to not have a Canadian city win. But having said that, you know, we win everything there is internationally. So everybody else, just have a Coke and a smile. Just relax. We're still the best. And the fact that we're not winning in a Canadian city doesn't diminish the fact that the Canadian players collectively are still the best. So focus on that. And sooner rather than later, we'll have a Canadian win.
Yeah. So shifting gears a little bit here, before, you know, COVID and the entire pandemic sort of hit, you were just in the process of wrapping up actually a book tour. You had just written a book there called The Real Ogie, The Life and Legend of Goldie Goldthorpe there. Most people who write a book about an athlete, you know, say someone who writes a book about Michael Jordan or something, don't then proceed to go on a publicity tour with that actual athlete. But in your case, you and Goldie actually did go from town to town and all across, you know, the province in Canada together there. What was that experience like, actually being on the road with him, having written a book about him as well too?
That's my next book. Yeah, we discovered early on that neither that we both have an extreme aversion to last call. And you know, we joked about it. Goldie made the joke that we had all these advertisements, you know, advertising that we're going to this bar or we're going to be at this event and we're working this event, and come and meet Liam and Goldie and buy a copy of the book, and they'll be here from 5 p.m. until 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. or something. And Goldie said, we always saw 5. What the hell was 8? A suggestion? We never left. We'd only leave if someone said, okay, we're going over here to drink. Okay, well, then we'll go. I mean, it was fantastic. It had its moments, and you're going to spend that much time together with a guy, and we were riding in cars together. You know, we were literally planes, trains, and automobiles there, and it was pretty extensive. We hit Eastern Canada, you know, pretty good. We had 8 separate visits here to Ottawa in like 19 months or something. It was incredible. Less than that, but 14 months, 15 months, and you know, we hit the East Coast, and we had up and down Ontario. We had Montreal. We did well. We did really well, and we had lots more planned. And the pandemic stepped up, and God willing, down the road we'll be able to pick some of that up and get out to Western Canada and together. Like Goldie did Vancouver and parts of BC because he lives out there. So He was out there. I wasn't able to join him for that, and that was part of the plan at some point in time. And we had some Alberta stuff scheduled that got shelved, and we were scheduled to go back out to Prince Edward Island, and that got shelved, and this, that, and the other. But no, listen, it was great. It's the hardest thing I've ever done was this particular project. I wrote 3 books before this, all hockey trivia books. Even the second one I wrote when I was 10 weeks past deadline with Random House was much, 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 much easier than this one was. This one here, writing several thousand words, sending them to Goldie for review, getting the changes back, both factual and suggested, having to rewrite it, back to Goldie for approval, and then ultimately all to an editor later, who then also would make changes, and then the collaboration starts again. It was a process, man. It was laborious, laborious for sure, but I'm very proud of it. I'm proud of it. The guy's story needed to be told. I've never in my life, Kyle, met anybody like him. And I've met a lot of people. I've been around. I'm on the back 9 here in my life. But I've never met anybody like this guy. And his story needed to be told. And I'm working on the screenplay as best I can. I told everybody I will make it a book, and I did. And I'm telling everybody now I will make it a movie, and I will. It's great in covers. It's going to be unbelievable on the big screen.
Yeah, amazing. And, I'm sure you can probably think of dozens and dozens of stories here. Some of them you might not actually want to share on air there, but, do 1 or 2 moments through all of that on the road with him sort of stand out to you as extra special or extra memorable?
Well, I'll tell you a couple things. It was absolutely amazing how many former teammates of his or guys that he played against showed up at our various stops. Doug Gilmore's brother, Dave, in Kingston, who we had not seen since they finished playing together. There were some examples like that. We launched the book in Thunder Bay, and his longtime friend and teammate Mike Smith was there, and I got a chance to meet Mike. I'd heard so much about him. Actually, Mike came to Ottawa. Mike came to Ottawa. I'm thinking of somebody else, but that we met up there. His name escapes me right now. But there was a couple of others. Kevin Devine, who he calls Spuddy, that he played against in junior in a series that was a real telling moment of Goldie's junior career, and he later played with as a professional on 4 different teams, and they remain very good friends. And that to me was pretty cool. Guys like Larry Mavety in Kingston, Barry Brooks. I mean, the guy like Larry Mavety is very well known in hockey circles. Him and Goldie were teammates on 2 teams in pro hockey, including Denver and the World Hockey Association, the Denver Spurs. It's incredible stuff to me. There was a couple of nights, Goldie really wanted to hit this strip joint, in Montreal. And I didn't really know why, but, being a good wingman, I said, okay, I really don't want to, but I'll go too.
Twist your rubber arm, right?
And, he, as it turns out, he wanted to go and he wanted to sit in a specific spot, and he had his internal reasons for it, and it was somewhat related to a previous life he had when he was not a full patch member of Hell's Angels, but he was affiliated and associated. We have the story in the book. I think it's just another absolutely insane chapter of the man's life. Like, you don't leave associations like this typically unless it's feet first.
Yeah.
Okay, he fought his way out, and every fight he had, every battle he had, every bit of trouble he got in was all with this. He never pulled a gun on anybody. He never pulled a knife on anybody. He never robbed anybody. He never hurt a woman. He never would hurt a woman. He's hurt men who have hurt women. And, he saved a woman's life in San Diego. She was beaten to death. And he got badly stabbed for that. He confronted drug dealers who were selling drugs to kids and had sold drugs to his ex-girlfriend. And she had an overdose. and he confronted them. They pulled a gun and shot him. He missed training camp because he was recovering from an attempted murder where he was shot by drug dealers. Who else in hockey has these stories?
Yeah.
Nobody. Did I see him get a little testy a couple times? Yeah. There was a couple times where it's, let's say, scared me, maybe a little.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's 67 now, but you can feel sometimes the current coming off his body, and you just know that there's a particular scenario that's happening that he's not happy with.
Yeah.
And there's a number of different things why that was the case. Fortunately, very few, but there were a couple. And we had this impaired guy in Summerside, Prince Edward Island, who came up, and George Chavallo sadly has his Alzheimer's is well on its way, and God love him, one of the greatest Canadian athletes of all time, and he was in attendance, and Goldie adores George. And this drunk came up. Listen, he didn't know that George was largely incapacitated mentally, and he was, I wouldn't say accosting George, but he was making a nuisance of himself, and Goldie stood up and intervened. And the guy was initially taking a little bit of umbrage with the situation till it was explained to him very quickly that his best course of action would be to move away very, very quickly. Because that's the other thing I would say is that discretion is a better part of valor, is an expression that exists in many walks of life, especially for a lot of people that maybe in a previous life or earlier on would have been known as a violent person. Goldie is not discreet. He wasn't at 6, 16, 46, or 66. And I'd say that guy had literally less than 5 seconds, and he was going straight to the hospital. And it would have been a hell of a scene and probably front page news. And there was a couple other of those situations that kind of were hovering around, and it didn't happen. And I don't know, nothing went down. But if it had have, we'd be talking about it right now still probably, because it would have been front page news more than likely. He's still very good to go, and he will not put up with any bullshit, real or perceived. And but I tell you what, I love spending time with him. He's a prince of a man. He's so generous. He's very kind. He's unbelievably compassionate, and his moral compass for women, especially the protection of them and children and animals, is off the charts. It's absolutely off the charts. You'd say, oh, that's commendable. No, you don't understand. You do not understand and he learned that from his father. And he made me write in the book. And when his dad passed away, there were more women than men at the funeral. And he made me put that because he wanted it in print for people to see how proud he was of that fact, that the women knew. You got to remember that time period. Northern Ontario, 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, women weren't exactly held on, whether they be mothers, sisters, daughters, weren't exactly held in the same esteem that the generations today are trying to move toward. And Alfred Goldthorpe, if he was around, no woman had to worry about anything, even from possibly their own family, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. And Goldie's pretty proud of that. He grew up with that. And his dad was a World War II hero. He was one of the first ever commandos. When the first commando groups they ever put together, he was one of the first. And he was captured, and he was a prisoner of war for 599 days. This is his father. He led multiple escapes before getting out. So, yeah, you're talking about a very, very, very unique man. I'm not kidding you when I say this. I think the book is unbelievable. It really is. People say to me all the time, can't be true. Just can't be. Yeah. No, he shouldn't be alive. No, he shouldn't be. And that's why the movie is going to be absolutely freakish how good it's going to be. Picture Jack Reacher meets John Wick meets Rambo. Put those three together.
Yeah.
That's who you got in this guy.
Amazing. And yeah, no, like you said, that was a quick 5-minute spiel on it, and you're only scratching the surface of what is in that book there as well too. And I'm sure
Totally.
you can go on for hours on them there, but for those that are listening right now, go out and get the book if you want to know more about it there. And it's just one of many in the story there. But speaking of writing, it's the pandemic. You've had a lot of time at home. Have you been working on anything new, or have you just been sort of decompressing after the whirlwind sort of cross-country tour that you were just finishing on?
No, I was fooling around doing some videos this day in hockey for a little while. I did them for 6 or 7 weeks, and I stopped. And I am toying with kind of waiting to see how things are going to progress. Toying with just doing, my own podcast or Zoomcast or stuff, Kyle, getting in the game and maybe doing something. I have a friend, Steve Warren, who appears on a podcast and produces several others. And we had done some demos and brought them to advertisers. And just right when the pandemic hit, sadly. And as I said earlier, really any chance I get to write, and I'm trying to find as much time as I can. It's a very tedious process, and I have no experience at it in writing a screenplay, but I am writing the screenplay for the movie called Goldie. I have 2 producers that have shown an interest already in it when it's completed, and I have zero doubt in my mind I will sell it. And it will be a movie, and it will be at the Toronto International Film Festival at some point in the future, God willing, when the world comes up for air. But any writing I'm doing right now, other than the odd, I write the odd little thing that I post on my social media platforms. It's nothing too extensive or too major. I'll probably post one tomorrow. I do a podcast right now with a buddy of mine from New York, Paul Cuthbert. It's called Sticks and Taps. We took a good chunk of the pandemic off. We started back up a month ago, and we'll go here for a little while as we get through the draft and free agency and everything now that the Cup's just been won. But other than that, the only writing I'm really doing extensively is on the screenplay. And it's fun. I was writing the scene the other day about when Goldie goes to jail. He went to jail. He was arrested over 50 times, incarcerated over 40, all for assaults, all for, just insane, all out, full on, intense, insane, unreal brawling. So he got these 5 guys picked a fight with him in Thunder Bay, and he beat the shit out of all 5 of them. And he got 5 assault charges, and he'd been in jail multiple times already. So they thought they'd make a statement because he was 17 years old. This was in Thunder Bay. They sent him to the Monteith Correctional Facility, 780 kilometers away. So we're guys in there at the time. We're doing 2 years less a day, 3 years less a day. It's a first stop to serious crime for a lot of these guys. It was just a stepping stone. They were all older. Goldie went in there at 17, and the guards came up, and a couple of the inmates, they heard who he was. Oh, you're the hotshot tough guy out of junior hockey, from Thunder Bay. You want to play hockey with us, son? You want to play hockey with us? This is a scene I've just been writing. So you're asking what I've been writing on? I was just writing this scene. Goldie says, yeah, I'll play. So he plays, and he just goes nuts on everybody. He just kicks the shit out of the world. Like, he destroys everybody, and they don't let him play another game. He's 17 years old, in jail. He's not playing Tom, Dick, and Harry coming from the book club at grade 11 or something. He's playing guys in there 5, 6, 7 years older, doing 2, 3 years less a day for serious crime, and he beat the crap out of everybody that came in front of him. I'm writing the scene in that movie right now. Can you imagine how good that's going to look on the screen when we get to that? My God, it's going to be spectacular.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll get one more question here before we let you go there. But, we're just sort of touching on the surface of some of, you know, the people that you've run into over the years and all the events that you've spoken at, and whether it's, you know, current NHL players, former players, whatever the case might be. You've worked with so many people. Is there that one person that you've still not met in person that you've always wanted to, that number one person on your list, that if you had, you know, magic lamp, your next event post-pandemic, it would be with this person? Who would that be?
Boy, you know, I mean, I only did one gig with Mario Lemieux, and it was fleeting. It was in Montreal back in 88, 89. I'd love to have a longer opportunity to work with Mario. I've never worked with Sid or Connor or Ovi. I mean, the current guys I really haven't had a chance to do anything with. In terms of the guys who have retired from the game, man, geez, I've been pretty lucky. You know, I've been pretty lucky. I mean, I've worked with 65 Hall of Famers that are either still alive or who sadly have passed. And additionally, probably another 250 players that have played in the NHL in the last 39 years that I've been doing this. I've spoken over 2,500 times in every province and most states. And I've been on every radio and TV show, including Hockey Night in Canada and pretty much everything else there is to be on. So, you know, people say, well, most people would say the three greatest players of all time in whatever order you want to pick them. If you do it chronologically, it would be Gordie Howe, Bobby Orr, and Wayne Gretzky. I've worked with all three of them multiple times. And, you know, I mean, Wayne and Bobby wrote the forwards to 2 out of my 3 books.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty freaking lucky, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've worked with Guy Lafleur. I interviewed Rocket Richard. I worked numerous times with Jean Beliveau. So, you know, I mean, the Team Canada 72 guys, they're all very, very close friends of mine. Those that passed and those that are still with us. And so I don't know, buddy. You know, I mean, I can't say that there's anybody that's out of the game that I didn't get a chance with. Bobby Hull, Stan Mikita, go down the line. I mean, I could go on and on and on. There isn't anybody really that I think I missed. You know, I never worked with Scotty Bowman. I interviewed him once on radio, and I scrummed him one time with a camera at Canadian Tire Center, which was in the Corral Center in Ottawa. I'd love to have an hour with Scotty. That would be a highlight for me, given his history. I know his memory is really, really good, and that's kind of largely how my reputation is built and based on that. And I'd love to be able to sit down and talk to him about some of the hockey that he witnessed and was involved in back in the day, including right through the time period with the teams that he was involved in helping win the Stanley Cup. So if there had to be one guy, it would probably be Scotty, you know?
Yeah.
It would probably be Scotty that's still alive. And I know he's not a player. I don't think I could give you a player other than I'd love to have another shot with Mario, because it was at a big dinner in Montreal and I got a chance to speak there. He had been flowing in for it. We had a brief thing together and that was it. And I never really got a chance to be with him any other time. And so I would say him for a past player, Scotty overall, and then your big three for the current guys, you know, Sid and Connor and Ovi would be an honor to do anything with, at some point in the near future or down the road. But I have been very, very lucky.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you could definitely do much worse than getting together with Scotty Bowman for an hour. There would definitely be some story swap there for sure. So before we let you go here, again, we would love to have you on another future episode there. But for those that are listening that want to learn more about either any of your books or any projects you have coming up, where's the best place for them to reach you or find out more information about what you got in the works?
Well, I'm on Twitter. I'm easy to find on social media. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. My accounts are all wide open. So like, come one, come all. Yeah. And I love talking hockey. I respond to everybody. If you got a question, you got a comment, you want to talk about anything, whether you heard me on with you, Kyle, or anything from the past or anything you want to talk about in the game, past or present. I'd love to hear from anybody. You can reach me on any of those platforms, probably the easiest way. setting up a website, myself and the guy I do the podcast with. We are on, wherever you would listen to your podcast, you can find us. It's called Sticks and Taps. We have archived segments there. If you want to go back and listen to some of the stuff that we've talked about before, the details are there. If you've got some time to kill and you want to hear what I'm all about, you can hear me talk about the sport a little bit more in depth in that sense. But that's pretty much it, pal. Anybody who I love talking hockey. I love drinking beer. It's a good combo, especially in Canada. And so proud to be Canadian. And I welcome anybody reaching out to me on any of those platforms.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today, and best of luck with all the many projects you've got on the go here during this pandemic. And hopefully we can come out the other side and see the fruits of your labor sooner rather than later, and get back to a sense of normalcy there. But in the meantime, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll try and get you back on in the future there.
I appreciate it, Kyle. Thanks for having me, buddy. Anytime.